A leaked backstage video shows Jimin and Jungkook in a shocking confrontation after their manager accuses Jimin of betrayal. What really happened? "You lied to my face, Jimin." The words didn't explode. They dropped, sharp and cold, slicing through the thick backstage silence like broken glass under bare feet. Jungkook's voice, though barely above a whisper, vibrated with betrayal so dense it hung in the air like smoke. The dressing room was dim, lit only by the buzzing fluorescent overheads and the flickering glow from a cracked TV in the corner. Jimin froze mid-motion, halfway through pulling off his performance jacket. His eyes locked onto Jungkook's reflection in the dressing mirror. His fingers trembled, clutching the fabric in a death grip. Outside the door, muffled applause still echoed from the stadium. Inside, the real show had just begun. Across the room stood their manager, Min Jae, stoic, arms crossed, expression unreadable, but eyes razor-sharp. He had dropped the bomb minutes earlier. A soft-spoken accusation that detonated like thunder. "Jungkook deserves to know what you did. You owe him that." Jimin had flinched, not because of guilt, but because of fear. Not fear of getting caught, but fear of something far worse. Losing the only person who had stood by him through everything. The room was suffocating. The air so dense with tension it felt alive. Jungkook stepped forward, his dark eyes never leaving Jimin's face. Expression unreadable except for the quiet devastation in the twitch of his jaw. "You said you'd never talk to her again?" Jungkook continued, quieter this time, but his voice cracked, a barely audible tremor at the edge of his composure. "But Min Jae just showed me the messages, the call logs, the hotel check-in." His voice splintered on that last word. Jimin blinked, once, slowly, then turned around to face him, his mouth slightly open, chest rising and falling faster with every breath. "It wasn't like that," he said. Jungkook laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just something shattered. "Then tell me what it was like." For a moment, Jimin said nothing. Silence stretched and warped between them. Then, slowly, he took a step forward, his voice raw. "I met her because I wanted to protect you." That sentence hit harder than anything else that night. Even Min Jae, normally impassive and hardened by years of idle politics and backstage drama, shifted uncomfortably. "Protect me from what, Jimin?" Jungkook's voice now surged pain, confusion, rage, all knotted together into one unrecognizable sound. "From the truth? From your lies?" From behind the makeup counters, the hidden phone recording everything continued silently. Someone had propped it up earlier. No one had noticed. Not yet. Jimin's hands were shaking now, his fingers curled into fists by his sides, as if trying to trap the chaos inside. "She reached out again," he said, voice barely audible. "She said she had things about you, about your family, about your past. Things she threatened to sell." Jungkook blinked, confused for a beat. "She?" he asked, lower now. "You mean my ex?" Jimin nodded once. "I met her so I could stop her. I told her to back off. I paid her to delete everything. I didn't want to tell you because I knew what it would do to you." Min Jae scoffed in the corner. "You also didn't tell him because you did it behind our backs, with company money, without authorization. And you lied to my face when I asked if you'd been in contact with her." "I didn't want him to hate me," Jimin said sharply, turning his gaze to Min Jae now. "I didn't want to lose him." But Jungkook was no longer looking at Jimin. He was staring down at the floor. Eyes unreadable. Lips slightly parted like he'd just been pulled underwater. "You should have told me," he muttered. Jimin took another step forward. "I couldn't. You were finally happy, focused, healing. I wasn't going to bring her name back into your life. That's not your decision to make. I know." "Then why?" "Because I still love you, Jungkook." Silence. A different kind of silence. Like something ancient and raw had been exhumed. Even Min Jae looked away, tension rippling through his jaw. Jungkook finally looked up. There was no anger now, only a strange, quiet sadness that seemed to hollow out his entire face. "You don't get to say that," he said. "Not like this. Not after lying. Not after doing the exact thing you swore you never would." A knock at the door interrupted the moment. A staff member's voice filtered in from the other side. 5 minutes to press. No one answered. Inside, the energy changed. Jimin's body sagged just slightly, as if 1,000 pounds had been dropped onto his shoulders. His eyes were shining, but not with tears, yet just the weight of everything unsaid between them. Min Jae stepped forward, pulling his phone out of his pocket and playing the video again, audio only this time. Jimin's voice came out distorted through the tiny speaker. "I'll do whatever you want. Just don't release that. Don't hurt Jungkook with this. Please." The clip stopped. "That was 2 nights ago," the manager said flatly. "That's not protection. That's negotiation." Jimin looked at him, jaw clenched. "You think I wanted any of this? I was trying to fix it before it exploded." "Well, it just exploded," Min-jae replied, tapping the phone once. "Because someone backstage leaked this. The full video. And it's already trending number 3 worldwide." Jungkook stiffened. "What video?" Jimin's breath caught. "The security footage," Min-jae answered grimly. "Your conversation with her in the parking lot, the hug, the envelope. It's all over Twitter." Jimin's knees nearly gave way. "No." Jungkook stared at him. "You hugged her?" "I was saying goodbye, but it was too late." The algorithm had already done its work. Public outrage had begun. Screenshots. Hashtags. Interpretations. Jungkook turned, slowly, like a glacier breaking apart. "Get ready for press," he muttered to no one in particular. Then, to Jimin, without looking, "We'll finish this after." He walked out, and Jimin stood alone, in the silence he had tried so hard to prevent. His reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar, haunted, not because of the scandal, not even because of the betrayal, but because in trying to save the person he loved, he may have destroyed what they had left. And somewhere in the vast backstage shadows, the phone that had recorded everything was still rolling. "I told you to stay out of this." The door slammed behind Jungkook as he stormed back into the dressing room, his hair still damp from the press interview, his voice low but laced with fury. The air around him pulsed with unspoken rage, and when he turned toward Jimin, his stare was sharper than any scream could have been. Jimin stood frozen in front of the vanity mirror. He hadn't moved in nearly 15 minutes. His makeup was smeared where he had pressed his palms into his eyes earlier, as if hoping the sting would wake him from what felt like a spiraling nightmare. "I had to protect you," Jimin said finally, not turning to face him. "You weren't ready to deal with her. You said it yourself, the night you cried on the rooftop. I remembered every word." "That was 6 months ago," Jungkook growled, "and I said I wasn't ready back then. But you decided that meant I should never know what was going on behind my back?" Jimin turned slowly, his voice trembling. "I didn't want to be the one to break you." Jungkook laughed, bitter and hollow. "Then congrats. You didn't break me. You just burned everything else." The silence between them crackled like a live wire. Min-jae had left right after the press conference. He knew better than to stay in the room when 2 people with years of buried emotions and fractured trust were about to implode. But even his absence couldn't drain the heat in the room. "You think you're the only one protecting people?" Jungkook continued, pacing now. "You think I didn't make sacrifices for you? For all of us? I know you did." "No, you don't." His voice raised, chest heaving. "Do you have any idea how many times I turned down endorsements, interviews, magazine shoots because I didn't want to leave you behind? Because I knew you were struggling, and I thought, God, I thought we were in this together." Jimin's voice cracked. "We were. We are." "Then why did you lie to me?" Jungkook's voice dropped to a whisper. "You looked me in the eye and said there was nothing going on. I didn't want you to spiral. You were healing. You had just started opening up again." "Don't put that on me," Jungkook said, eyes narrowing. "Don't make this about how fragile I was. I'm not your charity case. You lied because you were scared to tell the truth, not because you were protecting me." Jimin flinched. "Fine," he said quietly. "Yes, I was scared. I was terrified. Because I've seen what happens when you get hurt, and not just the crying or the silence. I've seen you shut down. I've seen the light go out. I wasn't ready to watch that happen again." "You weren't ready?" Jungkook's voice rose again. "So you thought it'd be better if I found out from Twitter? That video?" Jimin's voice cracked. "I didn't know someone was recording. I didn't know it would leak. Jungkook slammed his fist into the side of a metal locker. The sound rang out like a gunshot, silencing Jimin mid-sentence. "I watched you hug her," Jungkook said. "I watched you hand her an envelope. I watched you smile like nothing ever happened." "I wasn't smiling. I was trying to stay calm. It looked real enough for half the world to believe it was a reunion." Jungkook snapped. "You know the DMs I've been getting?" Jimin always had feelings for her. He betrayed Jungkook. He knew everything all along. I don't care what they say. I do, Jungkook whispered. Because I thought I knew you. I thought out of everyone in this goddamn industry, you were the one person I could still trust. Jimin stepped closer now, a desperate edge in his tone. I'm still that person. I swear. Please just let me explain. Jungkook stepped back, his body stiffening like a wall going up in real time. I don't know if I believe you anymore. That hit harder than any insult. It wasn't rage that pierced Jimin this time, it was doubt. The realization that no matter how pure his intentions were, they had been buried beneath the weight of missteps and secrecy. The door creaked open again. This time it wasn't Min Jae. Taehyung entered slowly, his face unreadable, holding a tablet in his hand. I thought you should see this, he said. He handed the device to Jungkook. On the screen was a raw video taken from another angle. Security footage. The parking garage. Grainy, but unedited. And something was different. In this version, the hug between Jimin and the woman wasn't long. It wasn't even warm. She initiated it. He didn't even raise his arms. She leaned in while Jimin stood still, rigid. You didn't see this part, did you? Taehyung asked. Jungkook stared at the screen, motionless. His chest rose and fell in small, tight movements. No, he whispered. Neither did the world, Taehyung said. That was cut out. Someone edited the leak. Who? Jungkook asked without looking up. Min Jae's assistant, probably. Or someone on staff with access to the internal cloud. But that's not the point. The point is Jimin didn't hug her back. Jimin didn't say anything. He just watched Jungkook silently, hoping, praying that something in his eyes had shifted. Jungkook handed the tablet back. That doesn't change the rest, he said. You still didn't tell me. You still met her. I know. You still use company money. I'll pay it back. You still lied. Jimin nodded. I did. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Jungkook said quietly, Why did you say you loved me? Jimin froze. Jungkook looked at him, and this time, the fire in his eyes was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. Pain. Why now? Why in the middle of all of this? Jimin's voice shook. Because I thought I was going to lose you, and I didn't want to die without you knowing. You're not going to lose me, Jungkook said. But I don't know if you'll ever have me back the way you used to. That was the moment it hit Jimin fully. Not just the consequences of his choices, but the magnitude of what he had done. Not out of malice, not out of manipulation, but out of fear. A fear that had twisted love into secrecy, protection into silence. The kind of fear that ruins the very thing it's trying to save. Taehyung stepped out of the room quietly. He had seen enough. Behind them, a phone buzzed. News alerts, headlines. BTS member involved in scandal secret meeting caught on video. Variations of the same narrative were spinning out of control. Jungkook looked down at the phone and sighed. I'm going to need space, he said. Jimin nodded. His voice broke. Take all the time you need. Jungkook opened the door. But before stepping out, he turned back one last time. I never needed you to protect me, Jimin. I just needed you to stand beside me. Then he was gone. And Jimin was alone again. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was full of every word said, every truth revealed, and every heartbeat that still hadn't decided whether to forgive or to forget. And in that silence, a new question began to rise, not about the betrayal, but about who had set them up in the first place. Because if the footage had been edited, someone wanted the world to misunderstand. And someone wanted Jimin and Jungkook torn apart for good. The air inside the practice studio had a sterile chill to it, like a hospital ward where emotional trauma replaced physical injury. Mirrors lined the walls, reflecting fractured versions of reality as Jimin stood in the center alone, his face pale, jaw clenched, and headphones hanging uselessly from his neck. The rehearsal tracks weren't playing. He hadn't danced in hours. He had just been standing there frozen in the middle of the hardwood floor, surrounded by ghosts of old choreography and memories too loud to silence. A soft knock at the door broke the paralysis. It opened slowly. Taehyung entered without a word, a manila envelope in his hand. Sealed, unmarked, and heavier than it looked. He didn't say anything at first, just walked across the room, set the envelope on the speaker amp, and stood in front of Jimin. You were set up, he said. Jimin's eyes barely shifted, but the flicker of disbelief in them was unmistakable. Taehyung continued, voice low, deliberate. I checked the server logs. The leak didn't come from a random staff member. It was pulled from the internal surveillance archives through a VPN by someone with senior-level access. Jimin's breath caught. Min Jae. But Taehyung shook his head, as if reading his mind. It wasn't him. It was someone higher. Someone in the executive branch. Jimin's voice finally broke through the stillness. Why would anyone want to destroy us like this? We're not even in a scandal phase anymore. We've kept clean. We've followed every rule. Exactly, Taehyung said bitterly. Too clean. Too powerful. You and Jungkook, especially your fan base, your influence, your bond. You two are unbreakable. Or you were, until now. Jimin looked down at the envelope. What's in there? Taehyung stepped back, his face suddenly unreadable. Proof. And a choice. Jimin didn't move. His eyes remained fixed on the envelope, like it was a loaded weapon. His voice was barely a whisper. A choice between what? Taehyung's silence spoke louder than words. Jimin approached it slowly, like walking toward the edge of a cliff. He picked up the envelope with trembling fingers, carefully peeled the seal open, and pulled out a series of photos, printouts, and 2 USB drives. Each one carried an unspoken bombshell. The first printout showed a chain of emails, time-stamped, labeled Internal PR Crisis Strategy. They were dated 2 weeks before the footage ever leaked. The subject line on the earliest one read, Initiate Divide Primary Targets, JK, PJM. Jimin's hands went cold. Underneath the emails were stills from multiple security camera angles that hadn't been made public yet. One of them showed the woman Jimin had met, but from the opposite side. Behind her, leaning against a black SUV in the shadows, stood a man wearing a headset. He had a camera in his hand. Another still. That same man entering the headquarters 2 hours later without signing in. He was wearing a company badge. One of the USBs was labeled Uncut Garage Footage. The other, Audio Extraction, JK's interview room. Wait, Jimin said, heart pounding. What's this second one? Taehyung looked away for a moment. Reluctant. There was audio surveillance in Jungkook's dressing room. From before you confronted him. Jimin's stomach dropped. You're saying someone was recording us? Not just recording, Taehyung said. Baiting. He reached into his coat and pulled out a separate phone, not his regular one, a burner device. He opened a file, turned the volume up, and let it play. It was Jungkook's voice. I just want to trust him. But I can't stop thinking that maybe he chose to meet her. A pause. Then another voice, not one of theirs. It was a woman. I wouldn't be surprised if Jimin's still in touch with her. They were close, weren't they? Maybe closer than you ever knew. Jungkook again. Quiet, shaky. You think so? The woman again. Sometimes the ones closest to us hurt us the worst. Jimin's eyes burned. Who is she? New staff. Temporary PR advisor, Taehyung answered. Assigned to Jungkook 3 weeks ago. She was planting doubt in his head? Taehyung nodded. And then that night, she resigned. Disappeared. No trace. Not even in the payroll records. Jimin's head swirled. So this was all coordinated? Someone wanted to rip us apart. Not just you two, Taehyung said, his tone grim. They want BTS to fracture, divide us from within, because breaking us from the outside never worked. Jimin staggered back a step, one hand gripping the edge of the speaker as if to steady the world. His voice cracked. Then we need to tell Jungkook. Taehyung's jaw tensed. You can't. Not yet. Why? Because he's already scheduled for a private interview tonight with the company's legal team. They're going to confront him with a contract amendment, one that removes you from his creative collaborations. Jimin's mouth dropped open. What? They're framing it as a business restructure to protect the brand. But it's a wedge, permanent. The rage in Jimin's chest ignited. I won't let them do this. You won't stop it, not like this. Not by confronting him again. He'll think you're manipulating him. Then what do you suggest? Jimin snapped. Taehyung leaned in. We go to someone who's not in their pocket. Someone they can't buy. Jimin frowned. Who? Taehyung hesitated, then said, Yoongi. Jimin blinked. He's on hiatus. He's practically off-grid. Exactly, Taehyung said. Which means he's the only one whose name hasn't been dragged into any of this. There was silence. Then Jimin nodded. Where is he? Taehyung smiled slightly. Already texted him. He said meet him in Busan. Jimin grabbed his hoodie in the envelope. Then let's go. Before they could move, the door burst open. Min Jae. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp with warning. They know you have the footage, he said, voice clipped. They tapped Taehyung's company car. They're trying to wipe everything. Jimin stepped forward. Then help us. Min Jae looked at him long and hard. You're asking me to go against the agency. I'm asking you to protect the truth. A long pause. Then Min Jae nodded once. Give me the drives. I'll clone them. I'll leak it myself. Why would you do that? Taehyung asked. Min Jae's face hardened. Because I've worked 15 years watching idols get destroyed from the inside. I'm tired of being the executioner. As Jimin handed him the envelope, his hand brushed Taehyung's. No more lies. No more silence. No more protecting people by hiding things. This time, the truth would be their only weapon. They were going to Busan. They were going to find Yoongi. And they were going to bring the whole system down before it tore them all apart. Rain pelted the windshield like a furious rhythm section, drowning out the hum of the tires as Jimin sat in the passenger seat, staring blankly ahead. Taehyung gripped the steering wheel tightly, eyes locked on the highway stretching toward the outskirts of Busan. Neither of them had spoken in the last 30 minutes. The weight of everything, leaks, betrayals. Jungkook's eyes when he said, I don't know if I believe you anymore, hung in the silence, like static on a forgotten frequency. Jimin's phone buzzed in the console between them. He didn't look at it. He couldn't. It was probably more notifications, more hashtags, more edited clips with out-of-context captions dissecting his every gesture, his face, his voice, his silence. He finally broke it. I keep replaying it. Taehyung glanced sideways but didn't speak. Jimin's voice was softer now. Hollow. That moment. When he walked out. The way he looked at me. Like I wasn't even the person he knew anymore. You're not, Taehyung said. Jimin's breath hitched slightly, but Taehyung continued. And neither is he. The rain thickened. Grief does that, Taehyung added. Pain, pressure. It cracks us open and pours itself into the empty spaces. You can't go back. You just have to find out who you are after the damage. Jimin didn't respond. His throat tightened too much for words. They pulled off the highway toward an old neighborhood near Gwangali Beach. The streets were damp and flickering under the orange streetlights. Taehyung turned into a side alley where a tall, rusted gate stood in front of a narrow building. It didn't look like a place a global icon would stay during a hiatus, but Yoongi was never predictable. He wasn't hiding. He just wasn't trying to be found. Taehyung killed the engine. He won't like this, he muttered. He never does, Jimin said, finally looking up. They walked through the gate and climbed the external staircase until they reached the 3rd floor. The door had no nameplate, just a worn-out sticker that read, Don't knock unless you're bleeding. Taehyung knocked anyway. Seconds passed. Footsteps inside. The sound of a deadbolt unlocking. Then the door opened slowly. Yoongi stood there, expression unreadable, hair tied back messily, black hoodie falling off one shoulder. He looked thinner than usual, tired, but his eyes were sharp. You're not bleeding, he said flatly. Jimin didn't hesitate. Not on the outside. Yoongi's brow twitched slightly. Then he opened the door wider. Inside, the apartment was dark but warm. Guitars lined the walls. A keyboard sat by the window. A half-finished track glowed on the DAW interface. An open journal rested on the couch, pages inked in heavy handwriting that Jimin didn't dare read. You've got 10 minutes, Yoongi said, pouring tea into chipped mugs. Jimin stepped into the living room. We need help. That much I gathered, Yoongi said. But what you need is different from what you want. We need the truth, Taehyung said. Yoongi looked between them. Truth's a luxury in our world. Someone's tearing us apart, Jimin said. Deliberately. And it's working. Yoongi sat down slowly. I've been watching the headlines, Jimin exhaled. Then you know. I know someone edited the footage. I know someone planted someone in Jungkook's life to twist him away from you. I know there's a shadow war happening inside the company. Yoongi sipped his tea. And I know you're not ready for what comes next. What do you mean? Taehyung asked. Yoongi reached beside the couch, pulled out a hard drive, and placed it on the table. I've been collecting files, voice memos, emails, contracts, surveillance metadata. Not because I'm paranoid, because I was there. I saw what happened to Jin before enlistment. I saw how Namjoon was silenced during the negotiation scandal. You think this is new? It's not. You're just the newest targets. Jimin felt the air leave his lungs. Why us? Because your bond was real, Yoongi said. And in this business, real is dangerous. Real love, real loyalty, real vulnerability. It's uncontrollable. That makes it a threat. Jimin looked down at the floor, voice barely audible. I thought I was doing the right thing. Yoongi softened slightly. You did what you thought you had to. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it unforgivable either. I'm losing him, Jimin said. And I don't even know how to fix it. Yoongi leaned forward. Then don't fix it yet. Expose the people who broke it. Jimin looked up, confused. How? Yoongi handed him a flash drive. Everything you need is on here. But if you open it, if you move forward, you don't get to go back to normal. Not ever. What's on it? Taehyung asked. A recording. From the boardroom. The day the plan to divide you and Jungkook was finalized. The voices on it. They're people we used to trust. Jimin's hands trembled slightly as he took the drive. Yoongi's tone darkened. You're not just dealing with scandal anymore. You're dealing with intent, malice, institutional sabotage. Then we take it public, Jimin said. Yoongi shook his head. Not yet. You release that now. You'll just look desperate. Wait. Build your story. Make them think they've won. Then strike. And what about Jungkook? Taehyung asked. Yoongi paused. He needs to find the cracks on his own. If you rush him now, he'll think you're trying to manipulate him again. You need to trust he still knows your heartbeat. Jimin swallowed hard. Yoongi stood up. Get out of Busan by morning. The agency's already tracking your location. You're both on their risk index now. As they left the apartment, Yoongi's voice followed them into the stairwell. And Jimin? Jimin turned. Yoongi looked him dead in the eyes. When this is over, if he still walks toward you, not away, that's when you tell him everything. Not before. Rain greeted them again as they stepped outside. But it felt different now. Cleansing. They didn't speak as they drove back. The city lights blinked like warning signals in the distance. Ahead of them was a fight that would change everything. And behind them, for the first time, they had proof. But Jungkook still didn't know. And when he found out, it might destroy him all over again, or it might finally show him who had always been fighting for him from the shadows. And that might change everything. The glass walls of the executive conference room reflected nothing but silence. Thick, invisible, cruel. Jungkook sat alone at the end of a long mahogany table that seemed to stretch for miles. His hands were clasped tightly in front of him, his reflection flickering in the polished wood like a ghost he didn't recognize anymore. Everything was too sterile, the lights too white, the air too clean, and the silence too deliberate. A faint click echoed as the door opened behind him. He didn't turn. Two figures stepped in. One was the head of legal affairs, Mr. Kang, a tall man with hollow eyes and a voice like a dull blade. The other was a woman Jungkook had only met once, Ms. Lee, newly appointed crisis liaison. Her clipboard was pristine, her expression unreadable. They sat down across from him. There were no greetings. We appreciate your time, Jungkooksie, Mr. Kang said. We know this week has been turbulent. Jungkook said nothing. His jaw was tight, lips pressed together. Ms. Lee leaned forward. We've reviewed all recent footage, public reaction, fan discourse, and brand engagement metrics. The fallout has been statistically significant. He still didn't speak. He didn't need to. He wasn't here for numbers. We want to protect your image, she continued, her tone too smooth to be comforting. And we believe, based on the evidence, that a temporary separation from Park Jimin's professional activities is the most strategic step. It was the first time Jungkook looked up. His eyes were black fire. Strategic, he repeated. Mr. Kang opened a folder. This is a temporary amendment. Your collaborative projects, joint appearances, and co-endorsements will be paused until Q2 of next year. This allows the public narrative to stabilize. You mean you want people to forget? Jungkook said flatly. Ms. Lee smiled politely. We want them to refocus. He stared at her for a long moment. You think Jimin's a threat to my brand? She didn't flinch. We think this story is not yet under your control. Jungkook pushed the folder aside. Did either of you speak to him? That's not necessary for... I said, Jungkook interrupted, voice low and sharp. Did you speak to him? Mr. Kang cleared his throat. There's no need for confrontation. The footage speaks for itself. No, it doesn't. Jungkook's voice dropped further. It speaks for whoever cut it. That shifted the room. For a moment, Miss Lee's eyes narrowed just a flicker, but it was enough. Jungkook saw it. He leaned back slowly, studying her. You were assigned to me right after the leak. You called yourself a PR advisor, but you've been in every meeting, every document, every draft response. That's not PR. That's surveillance. I think you're upset, she started. I think I've been lied to, he cut in. Again, Mr. Kang's posture shifted uncomfortably. We are simply offering guidance. I didn't ask for guidance, Jungkook said. I asked for the truth. He stood. The chair scraped against the floor. Where did the leak come from? He asked. Neither answered. Was it from the company? He pressed. Still silence. Was it you? He asked Ms. Lee directly. Her smile vanished. You're being emotional, Jungkook. Damn right I am. He stepped away from the table, pacing now. The anger was no longer a fire. It was a knife carving through months of manipulation, reframing every conversation, every silence, every subtle redirection. How many times had she mentioned Jimin in passing? How many times had she tilted the story just enough so he'd start to question? You whispered poison into my ear, Jungkook said, not looking at her. And I drank it because I trusted you were trying to help me. Ms. Lee stood too, tone sharp now. Don't be naive. He lied to you. Maybe he did, Jungkook said, turning. But at least he was trying to protect something real. You came in here with a knife and started cutting at the seams. He pulled out his phone and slid it across the table. Play this, he said coldly. It was the voice memo Taehyung had sent just minutes before Jungkook entered the building. A distorted but clear recording. Ms. Lee's voice. Telling Jungkook Jimin had probably been closer to his ex than he knew. That he might still be in touch. That sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who hurt us most. The room went still. Mr. Kang paled. Ms. Lee's hand hovered midair. Jungkook stepped back. You played me. I was following protocol, she said. But the lie was thin now. Weak, he shook his head. I'm done here. As he stormed out of the room, staff in the hallway moved quickly out of his path. He didn't care. His blood was a drumbeat. His breath came in fire. His thoughts were knives and regrets and flashes of Jimin's face, the way he had looked when he said, I still love you. The way his eyes broke when Jungkook said, I don't believe you. God, he had believed the wrong people. He didn't stop walking until he reached the roof of the building. The city lights were a sea of blinking confessions. He stood there in the wind, letting it whip through him. And for the first time in weeks, he let the truth burn him clean. He pulled out his phone again. No more staff, no more managers. He called the only person whose voice mattered. It rang twice. Then Jimin answered. He didn't speak first. Jungkook's voice came cracked and soft. Where are you? Pause. On my way to the truth. Jungkook closed his eyes. Wait for me. Jimin's voice was barely a whisper. I've been waiting since the moment you walked away. Silence. Then Jungkook said, I'm sorry. So was he. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. The door clicked shut behind him, slow and final like the closing of a vault, sealing them inside a space filled with every word they hadn't said. The room was bare. No handlers, no advisors, no phones. Just the soft buzz of the heater humming in the corner and the uneven breaths of two men who had once been brothers in silence and now barely knew how to stand in the same room without everything inside them collapsing. Jungkook didn't speak. Jimin didn't look up. They stood 5 feet apart, but the gap between them was all weeks of silence, broken trust, surveillance, betrayal, confusion, and guilt. And somewhere beneath it all, still buried, still breathing love. A kind that had outlasted rehearsals and tours and sold-out stadiums. A kind that didn't die easy, even when everything else did. Jungkook's voice came first, and it wasn't angry. That made it worse. You lied to me. Jimin flinched at the softness of it. A gentle fracture. Not the fire he had braced for, but something colder, something that made it harder to breathe. I know. Jungkook's eyes were unreadable, but the way his throat moved when he swallowed betrayed the pressure building beneath his ribs. You hugged her, he said. I didn't, Jimin replied instantly, then added quieter. She hugged me. I didn't move. I know, Jungkook said, And for a moment, that alone felt like a crack of sunlight in a month-long storm. Then it closed again. But you still met her. You still gave her money. You still lied to my face every time I asked. Jimin looked up then, and his eyes were bloodshot but steady. Yes. Jungkook stepped forward slightly, the movement quiet but heavy. Why? Because I didn't want to watch you break again. Jungkook let out a low laugh, bitter and exhausted. And you thought finding out from Twitter was better? I thought I could make it go away before it touched you. You thought you were God. No, Jimin whispered. I thought I was someone who could protect you. You're not supposed to protect me, Jimin. You're supposed to stand beside me. Jimin stepped forward now too, fists clenched at his sides. I've always stood beside you. Not this time. I never left. You hid. They were inches apart now, and the air between them vibrated with something dangerous and holy and aching. Jungkook's voice cracked. You let me hate you. Jimin's eyes shone. I'd rather you hate me than hurt again. That's not love. That's survival. Jungkook turned away, raking a hand through his hair, pacing like a bomb trying to keep itself from going off. You know what hurt the most, he said, voice rising. Not the footage, not the leak, not even the idea that you were keeping things from me. Jimin didn't move. It was the way you looked at me when I confronted you. Like you'd already accepted that I'd walk away. Like you were used to it. Jimin's lips parted slightly, but no words came. Jungkook spun around. Were you? Jimin nodded once, slow and broken. Everyone leaves eventually. You thought I would? I thought I didn't deserve for you to stay. Jungkook's face twisted, something dark and vulnerable rising in his throat. Why the hell wouldn't you tell me that? Because you had enough scars. So you made me bleed instead. Jimin swallowed hard. I didn't know how else to fix it. You didn't fix it. Jimin stepped back, shaking his head. I know. Silence fell again. Then Jungkook walked to the window, his back turned, arms folded. They manipulated me, twisted everything you did into a threat, planted seeds and sat back and watched them grow. Jimin exhaled. I know. You didn't trust me. Jimin closed his eyes. I trusted the version of you that could heal without this. But that's not who I was, Jungkook said, spinning around, voice rising. You made decisions based on a version of me you wanted, not the one who actually exists. Jimin stepped forward again, tone rising too. And you let other people decide who I was. I had no reason not to. You had me. They were yelling now, eyes locked, years of buried conversations crashing out of their lungs all at once. Jimin's voice cracked. I watched you fall apart before, Jungkook. I watched you stop eating, stop talking, stop singing. I wasn't going to let her come back into your life and unravel everything we'd rebuilt. And you think that gave you the right to erase my choices? I was scared. So was I. They stood there, heaving, burning, alive in the wreckage of everything they hadn't said. Then Jungkook's voice dropped, suddenly hollow. Did you love her? Jimin's eyes widened. What? You were in contact for weeks. Did you? No. But you lied. I loved you, Jimin said, each word like a bullet. I've loved you every goddamn day since I was 19. Jungkook stared at him. Jimin's voice dropped to a whisper. And I still do. There was no response. Just silence. Long, stretching, terrifying silence. Then Jungkook looked away, blinking fast. You don't get to say that now. I'm saying it now because it's still true. You should have said it before. I was waiting for a moment that wasn't built on pain. Jungkook's voice cracked. We don't get those moments. I know, Jimin said. I've always known. More silence. Then Jungkook stepped forward again. Slow. Like approaching a cliff's edge. Everything's broken, Jimin. I know. I don't know if I can trust you again. I wouldn't trust me either. Then what are we doing? Jimin looked up at him, eyes glassy, trying anyway. Jungkook stared at him. And for the first time in weeks, he didn't step back. I don't forgive you, he said. I don't want you to. I'm still angry. You should be. I don't know if I can love you again. Jimin nodded. I'll love you anyway. They stood there, not healed, not fixed, but present. And for now, that was enough. The first honest moment in a world full of cameras and edits and contracts. Somewhere behind the walls, the system that tried to destroy them still breathed, still plotted. But here in this room, they weren't idols. They weren't products. They were just two people with bruised hearts and a choice. And they chose not to leave yet. Not this time. The room was dark except for the light of the laptop screen. The glow flickered across Jungkook's face as he leaned forward, brows furrowed, eyes scanning the lines of metadata and encrypted video logs Yoongi had decrypted for them. The USB drive sat next to him on the desk, like a grenade, its contents volatile, dangerous, and primed for destruction if it landed in the wrong hands. Behind him, Jimin sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring into the shadows of the dimly lit apartment. Neither of them had spoken in the last 10 minutes. Not because they didn't have things to say, but because neither one of them knew how to say them without making everything worse. Finally, Jungkook broke the silence. This footage is nuclear. Jimin looked up. I know. Jungkook turned the laptop toward him. This one's from the week before the leak. Executive boardroom. Your name. My name. They talk about controlling the narrative, minimizing damage, triggering separation clauses in the event of internal emotional compromise. That's what they called it. Internal emotional compromise, Jimin echoed bitterly. Like we're just malfunctions in a machine. They didn't just want us apart, Jungkook said, his voice low. They wanted to make sure we'd never find our way back. Jimin stood and crossed the room, standing beside him, eyes locked on the screen. He didn't blink as the video replayed the same sentence over and over. If we can fracture them internally, the public will do the rest. Jimin clenched his jaw. We can't go back to pretending. Jungkook leaned back in the chair, closing the laptop slowly. So what do we do now? Jimin sat on the armrest next to him. We fight back. How? We tell the truth. To who? Jungkook asked. The media? The fans? The same people who jump on every clickbait headline and twist everything we say? To Yoongi, Jimin said. To Namjoon. To the ones who built this with us. Jungkook exhaled. What if they already know? Then it's time they choose where they stand. Jungkook looked at him. His voice was soft. You sure about this? Jimin nodded. If I'm going to lose everything, I'd rather lose it trying to do the right thing. Jungkook's eyes lingered on him, and for the first time in weeks, there was something in them that wasn't pain or suspicion. It was something small, barely there, like the first breath after drowning. Trust. Still fragile. Still tentative. But real. Later that night, they met Taehyung at a parking garage 2 levels beneath the company's old rehearsal building. It was empty at this hour, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the low rumble of the city above them. Taehyung leaned against a pillar, hands in his coat pockets, his expression unreadable. You ready? He asked. Jungkook didn't answer right away. He glanced at Jimin, then nodded. Taehyung handed them a burner phone. Yoongi wants a secure call. Jungkook took it and stepped away to dial, his fingers trembling slightly as he waited for the line to connect. Yoongi's voice was gravel and certainty. You're going public, aren't you? Jungkook hesitated. We're going somewhere. Yoongi didn't pause. Then don't do it half-assed. What do you mean? If you're going to burn it down, Yoongi said, make sure there's nothing left to rebuild in their name. I don't want to destroy everything. You're not, Yoongi said. You're clearing the field so something honest can grow. The call ended. Jungkook turned back to them. We go in tomorrow. Taehyung raised an eyebrow. To the agency? To the studio. What studio? The one under RD. The one that logs everything. Voice memos, surveillance, unreleased rehearsals. The one they use to monitor all creative progress. Taehyung nodded slowly. And we pull every file with our names on it. Then what? Jimin looked up. Then we let the world see the truth. The next day, they walked through the front doors of the company building for the first time in weeks. The receptionist flinched when she saw them. An intern spilled his coffee. No one said anything. No one dared stop them. There was something dangerous in the way Jungkook walked now, like a fuse had finally been lit. And no one wanted to be the one standing in front of him when it reached the end. They used Taehyung's credentials to access the basement level. The halls were sterile, cold. But the servers behind the soundproof door buzzed with the hum of secrets. Inside, Jimin sat at the console while Jungkook stood guard. They searched file after file, audio logs of phone calls, meeting notes, voice memos recorded without consent, video footage from green rooms. Every digital footprint they had left inside this building had been cataloged and quietly used to map out their weaknesses. Then Jimin found it. The full unedited audio of Jungkook's therapy session. His hands froze on the mouse. "Don't," Jungkook said quietly. "Play it." "You sure? I want to hear what they used." He clicked it. Jungkook's own voice played through the headphones. Raw, unfiltered, shaking. "Sometimes I think I only know how to love through pain. Sometimes I think Jimin is the only person who ever really saw me." Silence. Then the therapist's voice. "And do you trust him?" A long pause. "I want to, but it feels like he's always carrying something I'm not allowed to touch." Jungkook closed his eyes. Jimin took the headphones off and placed them gently on the table. "They never should have had this," he whispered. "They had everything," Jungkook said. "No," Jimin said, his voice trembling. "They had what we gave them, but what we didn't, what we never gave them, was who we are when no one's watching." He turned to Jungkook. "We take back our names." That night, they released it all. Through Yoongi's encrypted cloud, through anonymous leaks, through burner accounts and buried metadata. They didn't put their faces on it. Not yet. But the files spoke louder than any statement ever could. Emails, audio, surveillance, manipulation. The world erupted. And for the first time, the narrative wasn't controlled by the agency. It was owned by the boys they had tried to break. The world didn't just react. It exploded. Within hours of the leaks hitting encrypted forums and independent journalist networks, hashtags lit up the global feed like wildfire. Not just K-pop stans, not just casual fans, not just the skeptical public. Politicians, brand executives, former idols, journalists who had tried for years to break the perfect facade of South Korea's entertainment machine but had never managed to dig deep enough. Now the rot was exposed in 4K. BTS betrayed. Protect Jimin. They used Jungkook. Expose the system. For years, people had speculated. They'd whispered behind closed doors about manipulation, overwork, exploitation. But they hadn't seen the receipts. They hadn't heard the trembling voice of a boy in therapy being secretly recorded. They hadn't read the email that called two human beings emotional liabilities. They hadn't watched executives on video calmly discuss strategies to fracture the most sacred relationship the group had ever known. Now they had. Now they couldn't look away. Jimin and Jungkook were holed up in a small apartment Yoongi had secured through a friend of a friend. The windows were boarded. No Wi-Fi. They were watching the world burn from the glow of an old phone with a cracked screen and a borrowed hotspot. Taehyung was asleep on the floor, one arm draped over a duffel bag of backup drives and unmarked SIM cards. The walls smelled like damp wood and burnt coffee. Jimin hadn't spoken in hours. Jungkook sat across from him on the floor, phone in his lap, knees drawn up to his chest. "They're calling you brave," Jungkook said finally, voice hoarse. Jimin didn't move. "They're calling me a victim," Jungkook added, even quieter. "Like I wasn't part of this." Jimin looked up slowly. His eyes were rimmed with exhaustion. "You were part of this. You were the target. So were you. But I walked into the fire willingly, and I walked into it blind." They stared at each other. There were no clean lines anymore. No heroes. No martyrs. Just two boys who had spent half their lives under lights too bright to see anything clearly. Jungkook shifted closer. "They're demanding a statement." "I know. They want blood. I know. Do you want to do this?" Jungkook asked, voice quieter now, barely audible. "For real?" Jimin looked down at his hands. "I don't know how to live in the shadows anymore," he whispered. "Then we don't," Jungkook said. Jimin met his eyes. "We go together," Jungkook continued. "Or not at all." Jimin didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just nodded. Yoongi arrived 3 hours later with a black duffel and a plan. "You've got one shot," he said, throwing a burner phone onto the table. "Live, unfiltered. You speak. You control the story. No PR, no spin, just you." Jimin stared at it like it was a bomb. "What if they come after us harder?" he asked. Yoongi's eyes were tired, but steady. "Then they'll be chasing ghosts. Because after tonight, you won't be afraid anymore." Jungkook picked up the phone. "Live or nothing," he said. The plan was simple. No sets, no makeup, no script. Just the two of them, sitting side by side. One camera, one take. Yoongi set up the old DSLR on a stack of books and hit record. They sat down on the floor, cross-legged, knees touching. No stylists, no soft lighting, just the bare overhead bulb and their raw, cracked voices. Jungkook started. "This is Jungkook," Jimin followed. "And this is Jimin." They looked at each other once. Just once. A glance that said ready, and no, and do it anyway. Jungkook continued. "We weren't supposed to be speaking to you like this. Not without approval, not without review, not without filters. But filters are what got us here. So we're done with them." Jimin's voice shook, but he didn't stop. "They tried to turn us against each other. They used our silence as a weapon. They recorded our therapy. They called us liabilities. They edited our truths until they looked like betrayals." Jungkook's throat tightened. "We let ourselves believe them. We let them tell us what we were. We let fear win." Jimin looked straight at the lens. "No more." Jungkook nodded. "We're not going to tell you how to feel. We're not going to defend ourselves. We're just going to tell you what we know." For the next 20 minutes, they spoke. About the footage, the woman planted in Jungkook's PR team, the edited video, the silence, the confrontation, the nights neither of them could sleep, the conversations they never had because someone always turned off the mic when things got real, the therapy room that was supposed to be sacred. "No more." Jungkook nodded. "We're not going to tell you how to feel. We're not going to defend ourselves. We're just going to tell you what we know." For the next 20 minutes, they spoke. About the footage, the woman planted in Jungkook's PR team, the edited video, the silence, the confrontation, the nights neither of them could sleep, the conversations they never had because someone always turned off the mic when things got real, the therapy room that was supposed to be sacred, the moments they believed each other to be enemies when they were both just trying to breathe. Jimin's voice cracked when he said, "I thought I was protecting him, but all I did was give them the space to hurt him more." Jungkook's hands trembled when he said, "I believed them because I didn't want to believe the person I loved could hurt me." And then Jimin whispered the truth they'd both been holding for too long. "I love him." Silence. Jungkook didn't look away. "So do I." There was no explosion, no scream, no gasp. Just two boys sitting in front of the world telling the truth. The first strike was silent. No headlines, no press releases. Just a single message sent to every major broadcaster, editor, and digital news outlet across the country, untraceable, unsigned, but unmistakable in its tone. They are unstable. Their mental health has been deteriorating for months. We have reason to believe they fabricated the leaks to destabilize the company for personal gain. Jimin read the message in silence. His hands didn't tremble. His lips didn't move. He simply sat on the floor of the tiny safehouse kitchen, phone pressed to his palm, watching the words blur until they felt like ash on a screen. Jungkook stepped into the room behind him, barefoot and silent. "They're calling us liars now," Jimin said quietly. "They can't prove anything. They don't have to." Jungkook sat beside him, the warmth of his shoulder anchoring him in the chaos. "What do you want to do?" Jimin's voice cracked. "I want to scream. Then scream. I want to break something." Jungkook reached over and took the phone from his hand, placing it on the table. Then he stood and knocked over the metal trash can. It clattered, rolled, then stilled. "There," Jungkook said. "Now let's work." The agency wasn't playing defense anymore. They had gone nuclear. Former staff members suddenly began to speak out statements carefully worded, filled with vague accusations of difficult behavior and unprofessionalism. A well-known brand pulled an ad campaign without explanation. A journalist who had previously written a glowing op-ed about Jimin now published a takedown piece citing unnamed sources who claimed both boys had a history of emotional volatility and obsessive codependency. The term codependent trended worldwide for 48 hours. Yoongi told them not to respond. "Silence is power," he said over a secure call. "They want you to panic, to lash out. They want to paint you as unhinged." "But we're bleeding," Jungkook had said, pacing. "Let them think you're bleeding," Yoongi said. "It makes the punch land harder when you get up." Still, it wasn't easy. Each article felt like a razor across already raw skin. Each manipulated headline a bullet fired not at their careers, but at their memories. Fans who had once wept at their duets now tweeted doubts. Anonymous accounts posted doctored audio clips, Jungkook yelling in a rehearsal, Jimin crying in a bathroom, fragments of truth twisted into weapons. Then came the lawsuit. Filed under seal but leaked within hours. The agency accused them both of breach of contract, defamation, and intellectual property theft. They demanded a full suspension of all individual and joint creative activity. Effective immediately. The message was clear. We made you. We can erase you. They met Yoongi in an underground bar near Hongdae at midnight. The room reeked of burnt whiskey and wet brick walls, and the only light came from a flickering neon sign outside. Yoongi slid a folder across the table. Here, he said. Jungkook opened it and froze. This is. Jimin leaned in. Inside were contracts. Real ones. Originals. Signed by 3 other artists who had once trained with them, names blurred by history, erased by silence. I've been building this case for years, Yoongi said, waiting for the day someone would be brave enough to make it public. You knew this would happen? Jimin asked. I knew the system doesn't tolerate loyalty, Yoongi replied. Or love. Jungkook closed the folder slowly. So we're not alone. Not anymore, Yoongi said. He lit a cigarette. It trembled slightly between his fingers. There's one more thing, he added. Someone wants to meet you. Who? Yoongi looked up. Namjoon. They found him in a quiet countryside villa, away from cameras and storms. He looked older, more tired than Jimin remembered, but his eyes still held that same unreadable depth, the calm before and after every storm. He hugged them both without a word. When they finally sat down, it was Namjoon who spoke first. I read everything, he said. Listened, watched. I had to know it all before I came. Jimin nodded. And I believe you. Jungkook's breath left his chest all at once. Namjoon leaned forward. But believing you isn't enough anymore. He placed a hard drive on the table. This is from my archive, board meetings, legal edits, even rehearsals that were tampered with. You're not just 2 boys fighting a company. You're symbols now. Jimin's voice cracked. We didn't ask for that. I know, Namjoon said. But now you carry it. They sat in silence. Then Namjoon added, they're preparing a live press conference. Jungkook's fists clenched. When? Tomorrow night. They're going to present their evidence. Smear you. Live. Jimin looked up. Then we go live too. Namjoon raised an eyebrow. You're ready for that? No, Jungkook said. But we'll never be. Yoongi and Namjoon both nodded. The next evening, the agency's CEO stood in front of a row of microphones and spoke for 22 minutes straight. He painted Jimin and Jungkook as reckless, emotionally unstable, paranoid. He claimed the leaks were selectively edited, the recordings illegally obtained, the love between the two, a narrative exaggerated by the media for romantic gain. He smiled when he said they were no longer affiliated with the values of the company. The press clapped, but 5 minutes later, the stream was interrupted. Another video went live. A black screen. Then Jimin's voice. You've heard their version. Now listen to ours. Then came the footage. Raw. Unfiltered. Days of surveillance showing manipulation. Conversations between executives whispering plans to divide. The full therapy recording played alongside the board meeting where they plotted to leak it. Contracts signed under coercion. Files of training staff being instructed to keep the boys emotionally off balance. And finally, Jimin and Jungkook standing together. We are not property, Jungkook said. We are not manufactured, Jimin added. We are not ashamed of who we are, or what we meant to each other, Jungkook said. And we will not disappear, Jimin finished. The feed went dark. In the silence that followed, nothing happened. Then everything did. Messages flooded in. Support from fellow artists. Quiet calls from former executives. Legal teams offering to defend them pro bono. A well-known director offered to document the entire truth. But there were threats, too. Paparazzi. Rumors of blacklists. Sponsors pulling out. Social media platforms marking their videos as sensitive content. Yoongi called it war. Namjoon called it the beginning. But Jimin and Jungkook together called it freedom. They walked out of the safe house the next morning, side by side, eyes swollen, hearts scarred but alive. And for the first time in months, the sun felt warm again. The courtroom wasn't built for stories like theirs. It was pale, square, quiet, a machine disguised as justice. Marble floors, long benches, artificial light that flattened everything into grayscale. It made Jimin's skin look sallow, and Jungkook's eyes darker than they were. The judge sat behind an elevated desk, flanked by flags and silence. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but everyone knew the whole world was watching anyway. Jimin sat 2 rows behind Jungkook at the start of the hearing. It was strategic. On advice of legal counsel, they couldn't be seen as colluding. They had to look neutral, independent, separate. But no matter how far the chairs were spaced, Jimin could still feel every twitch in Jungkook's shoulder, every time he clenched his fist, every time he blinked a little too long, trying to keep the rising heat behind his eyes from spilling over. The company had brought everything. Lawyers in pristine suits, screens, data charts, a PR expert who testified about idol hysteria and manipulated fan perception, even a psychologist who had never met either of them but still dared to diagnose them with dependency delusions fueled by trauma bonding. Jimin didn't flinch. Jungkook didn't blink. Then it was their turn. Taehyung took the stand first, eyes calm, voice steel. He testified about the planted advisor, the fake staff credentials, the falsified check-in logs from the hotel where Jimin had been seen. He spoke about footage being clipped and reassigned, about leaks timed to sabotage. He spoke with clarity, with receipts, with dates, with truth. Then Yoongi, cold, merciless, a man who had watched from the shadows for too long. He revealed that he'd archived company emails for over 5 years, that he'd flagged behavior long before the public even guessed something was wrong. He spoke of silenced trainees, staff turnover, internal memos, encouraging emotional distancing among group members to preserve mystique.